Hey everybody, this is our chapter 4 mini lecture overview. I'm going to do it in 2 parts, and I've got our week 6 agenda in front of me. So you can see that we did the weekly preview and then have you doing the class activity related to that History Channel documentary that I had you watch on body language. So this chapter 4, is the nonverbal communication, ties into what I've had you guys do prior to this week's activities. So looking at the mini lecture, part 1 is going to move us just through pages 141 up to 145. Okay, so get your books in front of you. I kind of feel like I'm in my lounge chair. I've got a different office arrangement here with my keyboard and stuff. What is nonverbal communication? I think if y'all figured that out by now, right? The one thing that you have to be very, very mindful of, and the book does point this out, is that the concept here on page 130 reads, nonverbal messages can contradict or override verbal messages. When in doubt, people tend to believe the nonverbal message. So that's a dilemma, isn't it? Because what your body language is saying may negate what you're actually coming out of your mouth and what your intention is. So we have to be mindful of what we're doing all together, right? As a person, as a personal, or excuse me, a customer service professional, right? So if you're, kind of laid back like this and yeah, I'm so excited, it really doesn't match, does it? And people will look at the body language. Maybe you are excited about it, but you worked a double shift and you're just tired, right? So we just have to be mindful of that. And then if you look on page 131, that section starts to talk about what all the different scopes there are to nonverbal behavior. And they begin with the whole body language thing, and then they break it down into little segments, starting with the eye contact. Now here, remember, all of this is contingent on what culture you are from, what your background is. If you're from the United States, what region in the United States? Because believe me, if you've ever been on the East Coast and then been on the West Coast, whoa, it's crazy different. Same as from the North and the South, right? We're all very different. So in here, it talks about in most Western cultures, the typical time period that's comfortable is for eye contact is 5 to 10 seconds. Now, if you're from a culture where having eye contact isn't necessarily acceptable, 5 to 10 seconds is going to seem like an eternity. And what nice eye contact turns into is staring. Ooh, oh, that's so scary. So I got my little handy dandy timer here on my phone. At least I think I do. Oh, it went away. Hang on. And we're going to look at 10 seconds and how long it is. So I've got my little timer set for 10 seconds. Now, what I'd really like for you to do is find a partner in crime, because sometimes I ask you to work with another person, and in this exercise or in this week's activities, you need to have a partner in crime: roommate, boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad, husband, wife, whatever it is, co-worker. So 10 seconds. So I'm going to start the timer, and then I'm just going to make good eye contact with myself, because all I can see is me, which is so anyway, and see how long 10 seconds feels like, right? And just think that if you had to do this with a complete stranger, which often a customer service representative is a complete stranger, right? Or your culture just dictates that we don't do that. Maybe it's just a culture you're from where women don't necessarily make long or any contact with men. So eye contact becomes a really big deal. Now, we do have some standardization. I say some in the business world, where we know that it's fairly acceptable to have some eye contact, and we use a handshake as a greeting, right? But don't count on that in customer service, because you're going to be dealing with everything, right? So here's our 10 seconds. I'm going to start it, and then I'm going to make good eye contact. Wow, that's very interesting. Wow. Oh, 10 seconds. Good God, looking at myself for 10 seconds. I have to stop it. Ugh, stop. But see how long 10 seconds is? And I couldn't even do it without not making noise. All of a sudden I realized I was going, oh my gosh. And we get into that. There's actually a word for that, and the chapter talks about that. So see how long that is? So be very, very careful that good eye contact doesn't turn into staring match, right? And be mindful if someone doesn't want to make eye contact with you. There may be a lot of other reasons other than they're not paying attention to you, right? Or what you have to say. And then, did you know that we have a word for this business with our pupils? On the bottom of page 132, pupilio, oh my goodness, and I'm a word, I love words. Pupiliometrics is the study of pupil reaction to stimuli. I wonder if somebody has a real job and that's all they do in that area. But regardless of that, be very, very careful of this. The book is suggesting that when someone is affected by this, that, or the other thing, that our pupils will dilate, and yes, they do, or not dilate for whatever reason. But be really, really careful about this. So now, unless you're like zeroed right in and can see someone's pupils without seeming like you're in their personal space and staring at them, I'd be mindful of not worrying about this. Let's leave this to people that study it, right? And the other problem is if you're dealing with a psychopath, theirs won't dilate. They won't dilate the same way. So for example, if you're a psychopath, you can take a lie detector test and pass it with flying colors because you're just built differently. Inside your brain, everything's built differently. And we've proven that. We already know that. I'm not just saying it out of the blue sky, right? So it's pretty fascinating stuff, right? So that's why I always tell everyone, don't ever consent to a lie detector test because we've already proven they don't work, right? Because you can be dilated like crazy or not dilated because you're scared to death, and then this little thing is telling everybody you're lying, right? So be mindful of that. Facial expressions, again, I want us to use the book to help us with this. So page 134. See all the different facial expressions they have on the top half of the page? So I want you, let's just pick a couple to look at together. How about F on there? So what do you think that what does F mean to you when you look at that facial expression? When I look at it, I think, they're up to something. Because it looks like one of my kids after they maybe stole a cookie or something when they weren't supposed to have it. Yeah. Oh, how about K? I think that's pretty universally to maybe, looks like they're really sick and actually sweating, right? How about D? I don't know what's happening in D. They look like they're a little bit comatose, right? So we could go through every one of these with a team of 5 people, or if you got some people hanging around, or you have your trusted partner you're going to be working with in week 6 here, ask them to write down what they think each one means, and you write yours down and see if they're close, right? Now, again, this is going to change by culture, region, location, how you were raised, all that good stuff, right? Now, nodding of the head, you'll notice that in my head, I look like a bobble, one of those bobble things because I'm a nodder, right? I've worked in customer service pretty much my whole life, right? So I've learned very quickly over the years and through education as well, and through working with some really good mentors in my early years, that what we do with our head means a lot. If I say, yeah, I think that's fabulous, I totally agree. What have I just done, right? I've sent some mixed messages, right? It's like, yeah. That's the most beautiful shirt I've ever seen. And I'm looking at my shirt like, wow, I guess I have a really loud shirt on today. Now, but it's very, very interesting. On page 135, they kind of get into this paralanguage. And again, I didn't know we had a word for all of this. And their definition consists of voice qualities or noises and vocalizations made as someone speaks that lets the speaker know that his or her message is being listened to and followed. Now, there can be some disagreement with this as well. If someone's complaining to you, for example, or coming to you with a concern, and you're the customer service rep for, maybe it's the restaurant, maybe it's a hotel, maybe whatever it is, right? They've paid for something, they're unhappy. And if you're making all of these agreeing signals, like because you're listening and you're saying, and they give this example right here in the book, yep, I get it. They may misunderstand that, okay, yeah, you're going to give me back my $2,000. And that's like, no, that's not where we're going on that. You're just actually listening and paying close attention, right? Now, gestures, you can see I talk with my hands. My husband says if you tied my hands down, I couldn't talk. I could still talk. But anyway, so make sure your gestures are, again, mindful. So let's just think about our hands when we talk about gestures. Now, you see, we talk about talking with our hands, right? And a lot of things that we do with our hands and our fingers may be perfectly acceptable within our, let's say, Western culture, the United States, whatever, but someplace else, it may not. And I think in the book, they do give us some very specific examples. Like, for example, thumbs up to us here in the US is that good job, thumbs up, well done, or it's completed, we're there. this can be a really naughty, I think it's really naughty, but I can't remember where it's really naughty. So you have to look up. Even if you just go to Google and Google say, what do hand gestures mean in different cultures? You're going to figure out fingers and hand, right hand versus left hand has a lot to do with that. So in customer service, we often have to go against our natural tendencies, right? I'm naturally one that will reach out and touch your shoulder, for example, for emphasis and that kind of thing. And they talk about this too somewhere. I think there's another word for that. But I have to be mindful that if you don't know me very well, or I don't know you, I don't know if you're comfortable with that. So I have to watch your body language. So if you're reaching out to touch someone's elbow or something and you see them kind of pull back or move just a little bit, just stop, because they've just sent a message they didn't even know they sent you that maybe they're uncomfortable with that. They talk about vocal cues. And again, they're talking about pitch and inflection in this particular reading. What I think is interesting is in the Midwest, I don't know if you realize that we do this, right? Because we don't have an accent, right? Go down south. My husband and I were traveling down south many years ago now, and I think we were in Tennessee-ish, somewhere in there. And we stopped for the night or whatever. We went to have dinner, and we were having a cocktail or something. And all I did, I mean, we hadn't said a word. We sat down. We were waiting for a table, I think it was, and we ordered a drink. By the time we just ordered a drink, and the person said, oh, y'all must be from Wisconsin. And that's not how she said it, because they put a different accent on Wisconsin than we do. And after I said, oh my goodness, how did you know that? I thought it was like magic, right? A magic trick says, oh, I know that Wisconsin accent. So it's like, well, no, everybody else has got an accent, right? But in Wisconsin, we have one that on the top of page 137, it's actually a pet peeve of mine. And I love to listen to talk radio. And when people call in, I sometimes can't even listen because they do this unbelievably. I don't know what the right word is, with emphasis. So some people have a bad habit of raising an inflection inappropriately at the end of a statement. So in the Midwest, you'll notice that some people will say, well, hi, my name is Roxanne. And maybe I'm not really excited about this, but, and it ends with this uptick, right? And we need to be mindful of that. Now, think Valley Girls. How many years? Oh, that shows you how old I am. Wasn't that like the 80s or something, that whole Valley Girl thing? And I don't even know how to imitate that. Volume is pretty self-explanatory. Rate of speech. Oh my gosh. See, I slow down for these videos, by the way. Because when I'm talking with one of my friends or whatever, I talk like twice as fast as this. So we have to be very careful. And I learned that in customer service too. I have to slow down. Check my voice quality. If you look at this whole list, check the inflection, volume, rate of speech, pitch, tone, voice quality. Articulation just means don't mumble, right? And pronounce your words carefully. We do that in customer service. Pauses. We need to pause once in a while. And what I just did there, and those are filler words, right? So these are things you need to really pay attention to for your final project. Oh, before I forget too, on page 136, it talks about in figure 1.4 on the bottom, positive and negative nonverbal communication behaviors. Have someone that your trusted partner you're supposed to be working with on your final project, right? Ask them to tell you if you have these filler words. How many times you say ah, or like. Or we charge our grandkids $1 for every time they say like. That's my retirement plan. Except they've never paid up, the little rascals. Silence. Oh my gosh, we can never be quiet. We never take time just to let the customer talk to us, right? And then semantics. I think I've mentioned before when I came home from college one time, my mom said to me, listen, Roxanne, don't use your $10 words with me, right? Choice of words. So don't talk over someone's head. Now in IT, this can be a real problem. Not too long ago here, my husband and I were in getting different cell phones and changing our plan or whatever. And the young man that was waiting on it, I think it was a young man, because there was a gal, then there was, it doesn't matter, threw out some whatever. And I said, y'all have to speak English, okay? Because we don't work in your industry. And they just looked at me and went, oh, geez, I didn't realize they even said that, because I, teaser said, y'all have to speak English, And we laughed about it. But it's kind of that potato kind of thing. And then it moves on to, on page 139, appearance and grooming. I think we can all agree that that's a pretty big deal. Here in the United States, we have a standard that we can all agree on, right? Now, that may not be the same standard in other cultures. So don't get on our high horse like, well, because it might be perfectly normal somewhere else, and vice versa. When we travel to other countries, they're amazed at how many times we take baths. I'll tell you that because I've been in places like that. Anyway, page 140, hygiene. And also be mindful that it's very, very hard for us sometimes to hide our reactions or our feelings. Customer comes in. Now I can give you a good example. I used to work in a little out of the nowhere. We lived out in the country off campus many years ago when I was in college, and there was a little bar restaurant out in the boonies, so to speak. And they did a lunch thing. And if we every once in a while, like customers would come in and they've been out in the fields, and you could tell, like you could really, really tell. Right. So, I mean, even us as a customer thinking, wow, you have to really hold your cool to sort of overlook that and not have your body language go, yeah, can I take your order, please? Hang on, I'll be right back. And you run off, right? Now, I'll tell you a story when I was the general manager in a retail place. It was a gas station, grocery store, and we were an oil company. And I was in charge. I was the general manager of the front office, the front side of the building, the retail side of the organization. So I had a back office staff as well. It was about 27 employees, and I think it was about 6 people in the back office. And they did, numerous things, but they were coordinating activities between all the oil and the fuel and all that kind of stuff. And when I came to work there, I noticed that one particular person had all these little soaps and there would be mints, but a variety of things like that on her desk now and then it would go away, and then it would come back. And finally I said to my secretary, well, we don't say secretary anymore, at the time, my administrative assistant, and I said, what's the deal with that? I'm just starting to get to know everybody. It was in the first, few months that I was there. And she said, well, she's kind of got a hygiene problem. And I didn't work in that back office area very much. And I said, oh, I guess I didn't notice because I'm not back there very much. And I said, but what's with all the stuff? She goes, well, people are leaving it there like a hint that you've got some hygiene problems. And I said, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Oh, we're going to stop that right now. That's just cruel. And I said, where did that ever come from? So, well, there was somebody that worked there before me, and they started it. So when your leader has a certain behavior that's maybe unacceptable, it sends the wrong message, doesn't it? So we had a meeting, and everybody found out right away that we do not do that sort of thing here. And if you do, you'll get fired, because I'm not afraid to fire people. It's a last resort, and we always want to work and train with people, right? But I'm a firm believer that if you're not a good fit, then it's time that we need to part our ways. And then I said, that's my job as your manager, as the boss here. It's my job to take care of these issues if you are uncomfortable doing so. So I actually had a meeting with the lady in question. She was a little bit older lady. And it was one of the hardest things I've had to do, but it had to be done. And it was so hard for her because she didn't know what all that stuff was about. And when I asked her about hygiene, she did not realize or know what I was talking about. So we forget that not everybody has the same vocabulary that we do. She was from a different part of the country, so she had a little accent, and of course I have an accent, and all her coworkers had an accent. When I explained to her the concept of personal hygiene, she was mortified because the light bulb went off, and she said, oh my gosh, is that all that stuff that's been coming and going on my desk? And she started to cry. And I felt so horrible for her. I said, I'm so sorry that ever happened. And it will never happen again. But we had a nice conversation. I said, well, tell me about your routine. Let's work through this together. And she did. And as it turns out, her generation, and they were from a very, very poor upbringing. And you didn't bathe every night because they didn't have running water. Now, some of you may think that's impossible. I guarantee you, if you go into the southern part of the United States, you will find people that live without running water today. Okay, so we just had a conversation about what maybe we could do to help change that. That maybe, because they did live in an apartment in town, they had running water, it just wasn't a habit, and how we could fix those kinds of things. Okay, so sometimes you are going to have to, and if you're in a leadership program or you want to aspire to be the boss, these are the kinds of things that you might be faced with. Okay. Now, clothing, accessories, I think that's pretty common knowledge that, just because it's Casual Friday doesn't mean you come in, hot pants and flip-flops, right? Ooh, I hope not. Well, let me see. We're at Western Technical College, and you'd think that Casual Friday would not have been a problem, but I do remember a few years back an all-exchange email coming out saying, by the way, in the summer months when now we have 3 equal semesters, this was prior to that, and summer was a little bit slower, right? It is not acceptable to come to the office with flip-flops and shorts on. Now, spatial cues. You guys are going to do this on page 42, 43, and it goes into page through 45. So go ahead and read this on the public distance. They talk about intimate distance, personal distance, social and public distance. And then it talks a little bit about environmental cues, which is a little unrelated, but this is just like the more crap you have on your desk and the more messy it is, the more people look at you and think that you're not an organized person. Again, these are all, perception is reality. And if you have a really messy, now don't look at my office behind me, right? This is my home office. My work office is neat as a pin, I'll tell you that. And then it talks about some of those personal, or excuse me, miscellaneous cues. So you can, and that often is related to jargon. So we're going to stop there. Oh my gosh, I've gone 20 minutes. So look on page 145. It goes along with our activity number 4 on the week 6 agenda, the spatial perception. So you got to find partner in crime to help you with this. So after you do all of that, then you're going to look at the ethical dilemma again on page 145. That's class activity number 5. So once you all get done with that, then you come back and see part 2 of the video, which will start then. I'll pick it up here from page 145. So we'll see you in part 2. Bye.